Hello everyone, we are back. It is Thursday night, and I would like to say hello to each and every one of you. This is Ordinary People with a Godly Purpose. Let's talk. I'm Rodney Jacobs, and I'm here with Dawn tonight again. Hey! And I miss you, Dawn. I miss you, girl. I've been out traveling. I've been to Virginia and I've been to other places celebrating the wife's birthday. And I know you just celebrated your birthday. So I'm fresh. Are you fresh too?
Yeah.
You got that vibe. You got that vibe coming back.
Yeah.
So how's that vibe?
Traveling.
You've been traveling?
We've been traveling. We both been traveling.
We both have.
Which brings us to tonight's show about compasses.
Okay. There you go.
Let's talk about that tonight.
All right.
Yes. So I think it's appropriate since we both kind of were doing the same thing, but we were going in different directions.
Uh-huh.
And I know in my spirit I wanted to share about compasses. That's what's been in my spirit about throughout this quiet time that we've had through the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Which way is our compasses really going? A lot of times,
what way is your compass facing? Okay.
Which way is it facing?
Which way is it facing?
A lot of times we think that we're facing the right way because we've been so, our compass has been ego-driven. And we all know that when your compass is wrong, you're going to hit a brick wall one day. We just don't get to pick and choose when that happens for people. The prayer is that we get back on the right track and use the correct compass, not the one that needs to be recalibrated.
So what happens when we recalibrate, though? How often do you have to recalibrate?
No, but the thing is, it all depends on who you are as a person. You have to know yourself.
Okay.
Know thyself. When you know yourself, then you are in tune with the seasons that you're in. Sometimes we got to recalibrate ourselves every month. Sometimes it might be once a year, maybe it might be once a quarter, but when you know thyself, then you'll know when it's time for me to get myself back in tune with which way I'm supposed to be going in the correct direction that I was destined for. And a lot of times we don't spend enough time getting to know thyself. We think we do by dressing the exterior up and not working on the interior. And it shows itself when we start looking at our life for real. So when we look at our life, is our life going in the direction that we would want it to go? And I'm not talking about as fast as we want it to go, because everything has to have a process. And sometimes we try to speed up the process.
Right.
And if we do that, when the food comes out, it don't taste good because something is still cold or frozen in the middle because we didn't go through the process. So it's not rushing the process. It's going through the process that I think a lot of people don't want. They want to go take a detour. But detours lead us to dead ends. And then we try to find another way until we get back on track on which way we're supposed to go.
So do we need to marinate on what we're trying to do, Dawn? Or do we just need to listen to ourselves, our inner self?
I think it's all of the above. It just all depends on where you are at as an individual. But mostly you need to listen to the person that made the road for you in the first place. You know what I mean? When you take somebody else's compass and try to direct your life, you're not going to win. You're not going to get to your destination. The person that made your travels, made your road, and actually gave you the compass for your life, that's the person you need to be talking to, and that's Jesus Christ himself. But, again, we can go back to say, we can agree to disagree. Some people probably don't believe in Jesus Christ. We do. So the thing is that if my life is working for me, it's something I'm doing right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Something that's in the Bible, they got to be right, because that's the only book I know somebody had murdered somebody over. So the bottom line is that it's about you coming into alignment with what your journey is supposed to be, and not the journey that other people said you're supposed to have, but the journey that the person that created you set out for you. And a lot of times we are ego-driven. Our compasses are calibrated toward our ego and not toward facts and the original plan for us.
Agreed.
And so when you are ego-driven or you're emotional-driven, if your compass is distorted, you're not going to get to the place you're supposed to be. You're going to be delayed. You're going to go through a lot of turbulent things. I can't swim, so I don't want to be in a river trying to get across when there was a bridge there, but because I wouldn't look or I wouldn't get the right directions, I decided to take the long way home. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes the long way home is the safest way home, but a lot of times the long way home can be dangerous if we don't stop for a minute, rest, and recalibrate ourselves.
Yeah, and that's what we both were talking about prior to coming on the air about the back azimuth. Like, and when I was in the military, if you're getting lost, you would shoot a back azimuth so that we can show you to go how to get back to that point you started at. And that you say a good point there, because you know when you're looking at a compass, you got north, south, east, and west with the 360 degrees in your circle, in your compass circle. So how is it 360 degrees? Does that do something for us as Christians, or are we like? I guess we can say, are we lukewarm? Are we lukewarm Christians, or we?
The Bible talks about the Laodicean church, and that's when they lukewarm. They half in and half out. And I think at the end of the day, some parts of all of our walks are half in and out, and that's why we should walk in humility, because we know that it's a day-to-day thing that we have to take up our cross so we can stay on track with God. And if we do not, then we're subject to fall. You know, the thing is, sometimes we'll get so super fixated on one thing that somebody's doing or what they appear to be that we don't see that everybody has a deficit in the church. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's why we don't forsake the assembly. That's why we have to be together. So if somebody in there has something you need, so you won't be deficient anymore. The problem is the connectivity, because our compasses won't lead us into the original plan to what church was created for. And when we are not using anything for what it was originally for, it becomes distorted and it's not used in a proper tense. So now we got all of these things happening that has nothing to do with God, because our compasses are off track. You know what I mean? Until we get into alignment to what God created the church and us individually to be, or whatever, it's always going to be all of this controversy that don't have nothing to do with God. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
This is how we welcome weights in our lives that was never made for us to have, and we end up blaming the devil, blaming other people, and then we got to really be honest with ourselves. How much did I contribute to this as a person? So when we start dissecting and knowing thyself and being honest with ourselves, when we can start walking in that place and let that compass lead us to the space of honesty, even when it's dim, that's when life changes for us all. Because weights will start lifting up off of us, because now we can identify where we erred at. Even when you argue with somebody, you know what I mean? You can't argue by yourself. So if we're arguing or whatever else, then I got to take ownership of what part I played in it, even if I didn't start it. You know, but we don't take ownership of when we get away from what we're supposed to be doing. And if you don't know what that is, then that's when you need to get by yourself and know thyself and get with people that have mastered learning themselves. That don't mean that you're trying to be like somebody. That means I'm trying to inspire to some kind of ingredient that you have mastered how much to put in the stew so it can taste good. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So when we connect with people like that, then we don't be deficient. But because we're pride driven, ego driven, or what have you, we're afraid to be vulnerable because we have addressed vulnerability as being weak, when that is actually strength. Because it takes great strength to identify that I'm in a vulnerable state and then get back into your proper place. But the world has taught us the opposite of that. You know what I mean? It takes great strength to show your humanity. You know what I mean? So in actuality, we walking in the opposite of the plan of what that is. And so when you do not understand what words really mean, you cannot execute them properly. That's why it's hard for people to love correctly.
So how did this year actually change us then? I know I love this. I love this theme on the compass. How did last year really make our compass change? How did our direction? Is it off the beaten path, or we're still on the path, Dawn? Cause you know what? Because when you say all this about the path and the compass, you know what? It brings to mind your dawn of the days. You know, because it keeps you happy. It keeps you in an awareness. And I love your dawn of the days. I read them myself, and but it keeps you to that comfort zone. But when that compass is just almost like when Jesus was walking on the water and the storm was the storm was there, and Peter came off that boat, and all of a sudden Peter took his eye off the prize. So how's that compass? How is that changing the way we do things now? I mean, go ahead.
I was gonna say so.
Yeah, because you got me going, girl. You got me going. You got me going.
Okay. Say for instance, we're gonna talk. Let's talk about marriage, right?
Okay.
So me and the pastor today at work, co-worker as well as a pastor, we just talking about, we celebrate anniversary. We was just saying, marriage is not for punks. It's just no joke. You know what I mean?
Hold up, that's number 6. Marriage is not for punks.
It's not. You gotta have tough skin to do this thing because you're dealing with another person. And when we said for better or for worse, there was no but in that. You know what I mean? For richer for poor, there was no but in that. Sometimes you're not gonna like each other or whatever, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is that when you come into alignment with what was required of you by God, then my feelings don't matter no more because my direction is what He said. So when I go back to my compass focusing on what God said, and not my compass focusing on how I feel, then I'm gonna either go on the right path or go on the wrong path. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, when I go outside of God's will and His way and His word, then I'm out of alignment. So my compass is not calibrated right because now I'm going on my own way, and my way is distorted because I didn't make it. Somebody else did. The only person that can tell me the way to go is the one that made the path.
I like that.
So the thing is that if I'm not following those directions, then it doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter what I'm feeling like because we never make decisions based on how we feel. Your feelings fluctuate. You know what I mean? So you can't do that. You have to know the difference between facts and feelings. The fact is, I didn't make my path.
Facts and feelings.
But facts and feelings. Because the thing is, the fact is, I know I didn't make my path, even though I feel like I know which way to go. But oftentimes, I can know which way to go. I think I do, but I can be very wrong. And so the thing is, if I'm going to play Russian roulette with my life,
wow,
or I'm just going to stay on the path of the person that made the path for me. And so that's not easy because now you're talking about humanism and all the distorted elements that we have attached ourselves to this being in the earth. Ideologies and things like that. So we have our own minds because one thing about God, He gave us free will. And so He's not going to sit there and disrupt my will because He said X, Y, Z. He gives me the freedom to choose. But if I know that I didn't create something and I know the person that did create it, why wouldn't I follow them? That means because it's a wicked part of me that has an appetite that's against the truth. And so when I identify that with myself and I understand that with myself, then that's when I can surrender because I know I can't pay attention to that part of me because that part of me does not lead me into the way I should go. My insurance policy is the person that created the path. I am doing myself a disservice, and we don't oftentimes own that because our appetites are driven by things that don't got nothing to do with God. And until we tell the truth about it, you know what I'm saying? We will continue on having these distorted conversations to make us feel like we're so prolific and sound. It's real simple, but we make things real complicated because we want to entwine our will into God's will. It will never work.
That's true, and that's how we calibrate this compass. This our knowledge, our thinking, our knowledge of thinking, in order for this compass to be calibrated correctly. In order for us
to be honest with yourself, God wants us to be honest with ourselves. When I say know thyself, that means that all of us have some sort of wickedness about us. And if we embrace that wickedness, it will come alive and lead us. And the thing is that because we don't keep that thing under control, because if our appetite is our compass, we will continue on to embrace the wicked part of us and not the one that created us.
That's
because we all have that, but we don't want to say that because we Christians. I'm not wicked. You do, because Jesus said in the Word, and we don't even know the wickedness of our hearts.
Right.
So just when you think your heart is pure, it's another deeper level of that. We got to constantly keep saying, create in me a clean heart, renew a right spirit in me, Lord. Renew a right spirit in me, because right now my spirit ain't even thinking right, but do things that's against the principles of God. want the benefits like we've been activated right. When you keep lying to yourself, you begin to believe your lies. And when you believe your lies, you lie to anybody. You understand? And so when you start lying to anybody, you start believing the lie that the enemy tells you, and that's your compass. But your life is not working. He's tricking you because he'll give you that momentary gratification, and you'll have long-term ramifications for the choices that we made because we would not get back on the path.
Wow. Hey, you're listening to that John she just blew on a bombshell right there. You're listening to Ordinary People, the Godly Purpose. Let's talk with Rodney and Dawn. We're talking about what way is your compass facing, and this is going to be part one. Yes, Dawn, this is part one because I like this. I like this.
The thing is, Jay, we gotta start being honest so we can really be walking in true freedom. And honesty travels in itself, and you have to peel off things just like an onion. You got to peel off the hollow part of the onion so you can get inside of it, or you got to peel off the skin so you can get the sweet stuff in the middle. But sometimes the skin is bitter. You know what I mean? And we tend to embrace it because it looks nice, but it's not nice. And we are not nice all the time. We do not represent God like we should as men and women of God. Even people that's nice people, we just don't represent like we say we want it. We want stuff for nothing because we live in a microwave society. And if it's not quick and easy or make me feel good, then I feel like it's not of God. And that's a lie. It's a lie. We keep lying to ourselves. We keep following things that dishonor us and dishonor the Lord we say we serve.
And this past year has proven that. I have to.
Happened.
Go ahead, sis. Tell us.
Look what's happened.
You know, just in the last couple days, the last couple week or so, we just had a crisis with gasoline because of a hack.
But not just that, just the humanism part of it.
Yes.
You have some people that have bowed down to God in this hour. But then you have so many people that fell away from God because he said in the last days there was going to be a great falling away. Even the very elite that we think so saved and sound are going to be the ones that's going to be exposed. God said these things was going to happen. So thinking not strange. I'm just not trying to fall away with these jokers. I'm just not. And that means if I got to be ostracized or whatever else, I'll do that. But you cannot say that you're trying your best to be a citizen of the kingdom and God's word don't bring you back into right standing with him. That's a compass. You know what I mean? And so the thing is that what happens is that we can sit there again and try to redo God's word. But if it's causing discord, if it's causing disgruntledness or anything that's opposite of good, then you should know that's not God. But because you're not in tune with God, you can't tell the difference because one is embracing the creature of you. And so when we're embracing that part, the part that feels good, because God, when he's commanding us to come up, that don't always feel good. It stretches our humanism because the human part of me just want to do what I want to do. But the God of me won't allow me to do it. That's why you always wrestling against not flesh and blood, but the high things, the principalities, or whatever. You fighting against yourself, the creature and the spirit person. Always, because we in this world, but we shouldn't be of this world. And so when you're in situations, something that God in you should stop you. But if our compass is focused and directing us in wrong things because we are appetite driven and our flesh is ruling our life, then we're going to hit a brick wall. And the thing is, we always fall down and start bowing down and calling for Jesus when we hit the brick wall, instead of understanding the rules and regulations when you decide to get on that type of ride.
So Dawn, what happens when that compass comes to that ultimate crossroad where the magnetic north, as we like, if we were going to the Arctic, they talk about magnetic north and magnetic south and all this other stuff on a compass. But what happens when we get to that crossroad and that compass is just going haywire? What should we do then?
That's when you got to be still and know that God is here. You know what I mean?
That's not when we're listening, right?
You know, we're not listening.
We're not listening.
We're still moving. You know what I mean? And because what we're hearing when we do listen does not resonate with what our appetite is saying. we'll still listen to the appetite, knowing the appetite is making us sick. Like diabetes. You know what I
Okay.
mean? When
Okay.
you know that you have diabetes, yeah, and you know that if you eat too much sugar or anything with carbs and everything else, you know you're going to start getting sick. Your body's going to malfunction. Well, how many times have our life malfunctioned because we wouldn't listen? This is where self-discipline comes in. God constantly has us in the gymnasium of this walk called Christianity, exercising our muscles. And when you don't do the exercise right and you try to do it your own way, you're going to hurt yourself.
And you know that brings up a good point that you're saying, because you know when you have your GPS on and you get off the path, it always says recalculating, rerouting.
Yep. And reroute ourselves and stuff. But sometimes we say, "Oh, I know the way," but you end up lost.
Right.
You
Even though it's rerouting you.
Yeah, so all of these deaths that happened during this pandemic was taught me, I'm going to say personally, that some things don't even warrant my response. And sometimes we co-sign on a lot of things that's happening, that's frustrating us because we just want to be right.
Okay, you give me more on that cosign. I like that.
You know what I mean? We contribute to things that is against us, but then we complain about it. Dysfunctional.
Wow.
You know what I mean? We're adding these things to us because our egos want to be right. We want to be the one that's smarter than everybody else. Why do you want to be smarter than everybody else? Why? That's because somewhere in your path you had got an ailment put on you of not feeling value or enough. That's where that came from.
And has that came out a lot, didn't you think? During this pandemic, people start to feel that way.
They start every ailment, everything that every little anxiety or whatever else that was hitting in the crevices of our life, and the busyness of life hit it. It was started revealing itself. You know what I mean?
And now we need co-signers for our own faith.
Check this out. That's why when you're in stuff, you should have healthy people around you. Every disciple, when they were going, you can't tell me that you was in jail and they said they finna cut your head off or die, that you wasn't worried or scared. But one of the disciples that was not in there, they kept reminding you to stay focused on the bigger plan. But the disciples now, we don't want to do that. Every man for themselves. You got nothing to do with God. You know what I'm saying? Because this whole thing is about ego and me feeling validated, because I don't feel like that in my regular life. So we'll go into churches and organizations and catch these titles and feel bigger than what we are because it makes us feel powerful. And until we understand what true power is, we will always have places like that where people will browbeat people because of titles and all of that other stuff. We off focus, or we're off, our compass is not calibrated correctly. Because when I am sound in myself, doesn't matter if I'm sweeping the floor or I'm sitting at the head of the table, I'm going to stay consistent with who I am and what I am charged to do on the earth. And I will not use my title to come against people, or I will not use the power that was given to me. That's why everybody that has power shouldn't have it, because everybody don't use the power correctly.
And that's why we need to take up our cross.
Right. So just like Pharaoh, his own words killed his own household because he wouldn't listen. Because he was so power-driven, the distorted power-driven. His compass was wrong. And no matter how many warnings he got, how many warnings have we got through our travels, and we still won't listen, because we will allow the enemy to keep whispering to us till it causes us not to even hear God anymore. Because it tastes good, it feels good. And so I'm going to go to that because that makes me feel good for right now. But when I get the consequences of me feeling good, then I want to call on the Father.
Wow.
Now let me just be clear that I have no way have I mastered this walk with God. But I do understand that I'm not a repeated offender. And I'm constantly watching myself and trying to re-examine myself and my heart to make sure that I'm not the very thing I don't like.
And that's for both of us, because we can't be a prideful driven, like you were saying before, because pride can screw things up, and it'll make your compass.
He said, you know,
it's a lot of wickedness.
You know, it's a great fall in pride. You know what I mean? And then where's that pride coming from? See, I like to go to the root of things, because that's the only way that I won't repeat anything if I deal with the root. Where this thing came from? Where this stone came from? Where did these insecurities come from? So I can kill it at the root, so it won't destroy my life. Because with roots, and I talk about this in my book, when you have roots or what have you, never know when it's going to unearth itself. So just because you think you hadn't for now, it's only a matter of time that it'll show itself. So when you insecure or you got hit and hurt or whatever else, when you get in a relationship, whether it's with a man or a woman, or it's in a relationship with friendships or whatever, people come into your life with a job because you got this nastiness on you that engulfs you, so people can't even see who you are. But you want them to see, but your windows are dirty, so you can't see correctly.
Wow.
So you can't show who you really are. And so now you cause other people to be dysfunctional, or you cause the relationship that was meant to thrive to be dysfunctional, because you choose not to be healed because your compass is ego driven.
Wow. And this makes what everything you said reality, because without that compass being put in the right direction, we can always go off the beaten path, and we have to be recalibrated, know thyself, take up that cross, and that distorted background, that distortion. You get a lot of distortion. I remember listening to an AM radio, and you get that distorted and that static. Sometimes you get that static in your own life because your mind is playing tricks on you.
And the thing is that it's about the stuff that we listen to, what we see, what we needed in our life, or whatever else. And so, again, that's like when somebody's at a casino, right? They get on them slot machines, and all you see is dollar signs in their eyes. They get hypnotized by the machines because they want to win so bad, to the point that they didn't sold their house. You know what I mean? And they won't stop. You know what I mean? So because we won't stop and know that this is enough, we'll mess up everything, or we'll delay things. And it has nothing to do with the devil. So we got so used to blaming him for everything that we take no responsibility for or accountability for what we have put in motion. And when we allow our skill sets, or we allow the things that cover up our infirmities, we'll lean toward that when we're still on the wrong path, because in this area you might be good, but nobody's 100%.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Nobody's 100%. I don't care. That's why I raise my kids to understand. I don't care how good somebody is. Everybody got it in. And so don't be so quick to cover people, because the thing is, when you want to be what they are, understand you got to take on everything that you cannot see that they dealing with. So just because they got all of these nice things, that doesn't mean that they have a happy life. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that they're whole as a person. That doesn't mean that they think right. But because our skill set match our infirmities, we walk around in this secret society of being sick until something happens to us. You know what I mean? And people don't discover or get to know you more because they compass driven and they are following other people instead of following the right thing. Like you can know that this person, I need this person in my life. But because you follow what everybody else doing, power of influence, compass, you'll miss your blessing. You'll miss your blessing because you want to fit in with the majority. But your call is to fit in with the person that you need to connect with, so you can get that other part of the ingredient that you need that they carry. But we will abort our mission just so we can fit in with people. Wrong compass. And so sometimes you got to be okay with being by yourself if I have to denounce who I am in order for me to be in company with you. But people are strong enough because now our infirmities and stuff are revealing ourselves. I need to be seen. I want somebody to notice me by any means necessary, even if I have to follow something that's against me.
So how do we track our inner self-worth? About.
So this is the thing is, I always give people homework when I'm dealing with my clients. I love giving homework.
That's why I tell you, how you track that inner self-worth after all this accomplished?
These are practice things, Jay.
Uh-huh.
These are intentional things. We have to keep grabbing on different type of tools until we find the tools that work for us, right? And so when you're intentional every day about being your best self, I mean for real, being your best self, when you intentional about being your best self, that means you're gonna look at the ugly things too, because you can't clean up something if you don't see a mess. You know what I mean? If you always try to cover up the mess, then how can you clean up something when you're trying to cover it up all the time? After a while, it's going to ooze all over the place, and you ain't going to be able to cover it up. It's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be seen. So why not just clean up the small mess first before it becomes something bigger than what it should be? But we don't want to do that. We want to sit there and we want to be something for somebody else. When the person that created us, we need to be focused on trying to please him. So we are focused on people that don't even have the keys to our life. So we want them to see us as being something. That's because we want somebody to see us. But God shows us all the time that he is a God that sees all things. He created everything, including you. He sees me. Even when I don't see him, he still sees me. Even when I can't trace him, he still sees me. So because I know he sees me and he created me, why am I trying to hide that curse from Adam and Eve? I'm still hiding behind something that he can see behind every rock. So I'll sit there and try to be something for somebody else. The one that created me, that has the keys to my life, that has the direction to the path I'm trying to go. I will sit there and try to dishonor him for somebody that can't do nothing for me.
Nothing.
That don't make sense. But we don't have conversations like that. You know what I mean? We just want to we want people to be happy with us. Why are you not happy with yourself? Because when you dishonor yourself by trying to please people to the point that you're not who you're supposed to be, that's dishonor. And now you're dishonoring God's creation. Compasses, when they're not calibrated right, we go in these places that we should not go. Now we got to go through the recovery unnecessarily. So we have to be intentional about connecting to people that have certain tools that we need so we can be healthy inside, so it can show itself on the outside, because it's like a magnet.
Exactly. That's self-worth.
So I'm going to follow somebody when your compass is going away, that my genome, that means my DNA, my spirit, is telling me I should be connected with. It's a magnet. I'm going to follow that. I'm not following stuff that is against me being my best self. Because anything that you're around should awaken you to be your best self. And if it's not doing that, we need to go back to our compass and make sure that thing is right.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's show. And we're going to pick this back up on our next show. Dawn and I, we're going to pick this back up on our next show next Thursday night. This is a 2-part series called What Way Is Your Compass Facing?
Yes.
And go ahead and hit the like button. Again, thank you for coming back on and listening to us tonight. And most of all, tell others. Hit the subscribe button. And also, if you would like to reach out to Dawn, go ahead, Dawn, give your email, and that way they can find you and your Dawn of the Day.
Yep, you can find me on Facebook. Discovery House is the pink house, purple words. And you can also email me at discoveryhouse5@gmail.com. You can hit me up on my website at www.discoveryhouse.net. Or you can just write in a comment or what have you, and we will get in contact. The ultimate goal, guys, is for us to all be healthy, and the only way we can do that is by us all connecting and sharing with one another perspectives, so we can get those tools that we need, so we can follow the compass that was orchestrated for our life. And we can't do that if we're allowing all of the debris in our travels to delay us from getting to where we're supposed to be. And that's what it's all about building one another. It's not about us always being right. It's about us building each other so we can build the kingdom of God, so we can take on the things that we're supposed to take on by force and by being in right standing with what God is telling us, and not lying on God or using part of what God says to justify some dysfunctionalism that we don't want to deal with.
And we're going to stop right there, and we're going to be back next week with part 2, because we won't give you too much of the fruit. because we're coming with a lot tonight, and I want to make sure that each and every person gets a chance to understand about this compass-driven life. And I want everyone to understand that we had just came through the storm, but the storm is clearing up. And this is Ordinary People with a Godly Purpose. Let's talk with Rodney and Dawn. And Dawn, hey, you got any closing remarks for tonight's show? Even though we're going to have a part 2 on this, guys, because this is some valid points and some prudent information we want to get out to each and every one of you that are our listeners. And again, we're over our oh wow, we're over 500 viewers so far and still counting. But I just want everyone to know that this is a 2-segment show for this particular one. And Dawn, you got any like 1 or 2 points you want to put out for people just to marinate on before till part 2?
It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay for us to stay that way. And I just want to give you all a homework assignment to start looking inside and looking at them places that need to be cleaned up so we can have the meat of our life and not just living, but we want to be living on purpose. So we cannot do that when we continue living lies. If you need healing in areas, which we all do to some degree, own it and start asking and praying about, God, bring me before people that can help in that process. You know what I mean? Because we all are in the same game. We're trying to live a good life, but we want to live a life that God smiles on. And we cannot do that lying to ourselves or others.
Till next Thursday, this is Rodney and Dawn. Let's talk. See you next time.
Bye.